Hi, and welcome back to Freedom from Anxiety. And this is week 11. And hopefully, back from week 10, during your homework, you're able to find something that you weren't able to do months ago that you were able to try out. And I hope you had great success with that, found the skills to be helpful, the way that you're thinking to be helpful. And, again, this is kind of the final stretch where hopefully it's going to move you in the right direction and help you reach your goals and getting you feeling great and being able to manage all life throws at you. So for week 11, the skill this week, there's two of them. One is using your imagination, and one is peripheral vision, which is kind of like a condensed version of the grounding technique with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we'll put on that video, and then we'll chat about it as soon as it's over. So catch up with you in a minute.
Hey, hope you're all doing well with any obsessive, scary thoughts that you have. So there's two things I'm going to introduce today. The first is peripheral vision. So this goes along with, if you remember the grounding, the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, 1 thing you can taste, that we did way near the beginning. So this is kind of a short and modified version of it, and it's called peripheral vision. So you just focus on a point in front of you, and you just start to name things you can see out the corners of your eyes. So I see wrapping paper. Over there I see a lamp. Over there I see a printer. Over that way I see a filing cabinet. Over that way I see another lamp. So again, it's bringing you out of the past, away from the future, and kind of into the present. The other thing is just using your imagination, and when it brings you into the present. And so the other skill, if you have a great imagination, I've worked with kids for years. I've told you I'm also a professional magician. So, not only have I done shows, but I have invented several magic tricks that other magicians use around the world. So I have a good imagination. So this is one that's always worked well for me. And I was just working on a certain shuffle, but you're going to pick an object. And what you're going to do is create a story. And so the cards that I have, it's a bicycle deck. Bicycle's been around for about 400 years. This is a short deck. It's not even a full deck. But this is a special deck. And it's one that I inherited from my uncle, who's also a magician, who his grandfather had bought at some auction, like back in the late 1800s. And so these cards actually go back to George Washington and the early people, Thomas Jefferson, that wrote the Declaration of Independence. So Thomas Jefferson wrote that, and there was a lot of controversy in leadership whether or not that the Declaration of Independence would even be signed, and if the United States would ever even exist. And so it actually came down to where they just couldn't agree. And Thomas Jefferson was a gambling man, and John Hancock, who also signed the Declaration of Independence, he put the biggest name, was a gambling man, and they were on opposite sides. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, wanted to sign it. John Hancock didn't want to have anything to do with it, was kind of happy under England law and that sort of thing, but they're both gambling men. They couldn't agree, so they just decided, hey, let's do it with cards. We'll cut the cards. Whoever cuts the highest card will win. And Thomas Jefferson agreed, if John Hancock wins, I'll tear this thing up and we'll forget about it. John Hancock said, you know what, if I win, or if you win, I'll sign that thing, and I'll sign it bigger than everybody else. And so there was that agreement. And first was John Hancock, and he pulled out a 5. And the next one to go was Thomas Jefferson, and that doesn't work. He pulled out a 10. So Thomas Jefferson had won. So here it is. This 10 of spades is the reason why the United States exists today. Because Thomas Jefferson pulled that, John Hancock agreed to sign the Declaration of Independence. Everybody else signed, started a Revolutionary War, and now we have the freedoms we enjoy today. All right, so what part of that story is true? Absolutely nothing. I was making it up as I went along. I have no idea how long bicycle cards have gone around. I assume John Hancock wanted the Declaration of Independence, which is why he signed it so big. But in that story, as I was thinking, as I was going along, I wasn't focused on the past. I wasn't worried about the future. I was just thinking, what is so special, or what can I make these cards represent? So if you look around your room, you're in a strange place, find a painting on the wall, find a little object sitting on your table. In your imagination, just create the most bizarre story about it. It's a fun thing to do. It'll lower your anxiety and those sort of things, and can bring about a lot of peace. So if you have a good imagination, I think you'll like this one. If not, just move on to one of the other ones. But good luck with it, and can't wait to hear what you came up with.
So hopefully that's a skill that you'll be able to use. I was kind of laughing. I was watching that along with you, and I saw I had a 10 of diamonds and called it the 10 of spades. And, I was just in my imagination creating that story. And, you can see how it kind of takes out all those background distractions. And I work with cards all the time. So, of course, I knew that was a 10 of diamonds, but just in my imagination, just didn't even register. But I did want to share something that I had come across. So this is, my son loves to collect coins, and this is like an older coin and something special that we came across. And it backdates to the 1940s. And anyways, as the story goes, there was a pilot, Billy Smith, that was flying his airplane, and he was going to attempt to do the first like upside down airplane maneuver. So he was going to flip his plane around and, obviously try not to crash. So he went up and did his maneuver. And as he was there, he had some loose change in his, kind of in the cockpit there of the plane, that had fallen out of the plane. Now down on the ground from where he was trying to do this, there was Mary Johnson lived down there. And Mary was a little girl. She was like 7 years old and had 6 brothers, and it was always learning to play with the snakes and play in the mud. And mom and dad wanted her to do more girly things like they did back in those days. And so they signed her up for some dance classes, and she would walk across the field, and there was an old community center that had dance classes in that she would go. So one of the things that was popular back then for kids was bubble gum. So her and her brothers were always chewing bubble gum. And one day it was time to go to class. So she's walking across the field. She stepped into some bubble gum, and this penny that we were able to acquire as she was going over for her dance lessons, she stepped on this, and it got stuck to the bottom of her shoe. So she goes over and she goes into her dance lessons, and they're all stretching up, warming up, and then they go out, and the teacher wants them to start dancing. So all of them start dancing to music, and in the background the teacher can hear that tapping noise, and teacher stops the music. What in the world, what's going on, like who's making that noise? And Mary Johnson had no idea that it was her, and this was on the bottom of her foot. So nobody said anything, so they started the music again, and the teacher stops the music. What is going on? Where's that coming from? And none of the kids said anything because nobody really knew. So the teacher had the kids dance again with no music, and of course then they were able to narrow it down. And she said, Mary, what is that noise? And she doesn't know, and she looks at the bottom of her shoe, and she sees the old penny stuck to the piece of bubble gum. And Mary apologizes, says she didn't know, and the teacher said, no, let's try something, like go ahead and dance again. And she started to, and she noticed that the noise the penny was making against the stage kind of went along with the rhythm of the music, and ultimately that's where we got tap dancing from. And so where did this penny really come from? It came from my jar sitting on my desk. I just completely made up that story. So I'm just following up on that skill. And you can see, you know, for the last probably 5 minutes and then 5 minutes from the other story, you know, I just spent 10 minutes where I was so focused in on my story, using my imagination, that any anger, guilt, anxiety, worry that I would have is completely blocked out. So that is just a great thing to do. You're sitting at the doctor's office, find a painting on the wall, and start to create a story about who you know, what person from Mars drew this painting, or you know, just a pen that you may see sitting on the table, and what famous hands had touched that pen, and why that pen is so important. So that's a skill you have with you all the time. You always have your imagination and can use it at any time. All right, so for the lesson, I'll be done with my stories. But for the lesson, we're going to go into session number 11, and it's assertiveness and social health. Well, one thing you'll notice in the notebook, it says muscle relaxation for the skill. Again, that was last week, so just kind of scratch that out and write in imagination, peripheral vision. But there is an assessment for this week, so it's on pages 37 and 38. So I want you to go through that assessment. So go ahead, pause the video, and when you complete the assessment, have your total score, restart the video. All right, so again, hopefully you finished up with this assessment. You got your final score. So here's how the scoring breaks down. So if your score ended up 25 to 30, that would indicate that you're aggressive. So that's a little like too much, like, you know, I'm gonna run you over, and just wrecking ball type attitude towards life. So you would want to kind of loosen up, you know, some of your assertiveness, because it's crossing into that aggressive range. So 31 to 50, that would be assertive. That's kind of the ideal range. And you know, if you want this area to not affect your anxiety and depression, that's what you want to move towards. So 51 to 75 would be passive assertive. So, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's like you could definitely use a little bit of more assertiveness, but it's really not a terrible thing for you. So 76 to 100 would be passive. You know, that would be the people pleasers. You know, people tend to let people walk on all over them. And 100 plus, if you scored over 100, it's just you're a wimp. Like, you know, take this one seriously, work on these skills, because I'm sure this, if you're over 100, is playing into a part of how you feel. All right, so just like the other assessments, look at the ones you put 5s on, 4s on, and come up with those better but believable thoughts. You know, why does this make me so uncomfortable? What would be the bad part of doing this? So with that, we'll go into the key points and look at ways to help this. So one thing I'm going to start off saying, and this is probably the most important thing of the whole lesson, is in my life, I've had people tell me no. And of the people who have told me no, some of them I've looked at and said, you know what, they're a complete jerk, and I have no respect for this person. Like, yeah, I just, they lost any respect that I had for them. Other people in my life has told me no. I still respected them. I still looked up to them. You know, I still could learn from them. I still wanted a relationship with them, and everything was just great. And as I look back, and I'm sure all of you can look back on your life and say, hey, here's people that told me no, and I was okay with it. Here's people who told me no on this side, and for some reason I wasn't. And, you know, as I go back and look at that, you know, the difference that I notice is how the people looked at my opinion or my request. So if I felt, you know, my thoughts were valued, if I thought that the person listened to me, I still had a lot of respect for them. The ones that I lost respect for, the ones that, hey, I have this idea, you know, what do you think? And I say, no, that's dumb. We're not going to do that. Like, didn't even like acknowledge what I had to say, didn't value my opinion. But the ones who said, Mike, I hear what you're saying, like I can see there'd be positives to that right now. I feel we need to go in this direction, and here's why. Like, we may give that a shot someday. And I totally hear what you're saying, respect what you say, value what you say, and those are the people I can say, okay, like that's fine. Like, that they heard me, they valued it. I understand they're going a different direction. Maybe I don't even agree with that direction, but at least I was heard, I was valued, and I can continue to respect that person. So everything that we talk about today with assertiveness, the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness is, to be assertive and being able to say no is totally different than being aggressive and just being a total jerk about it. All right, but point number one there, assertive behavior is not aggressive behavior. So just because you say no to something, just because you stand up for what you believe in, doesn't make you aggressive. All right, so if you read Matthew 12:34-37, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. The Pharisees were leading people down the wrong path. You just have to pray enough, give us enough money, and we're the ones, you follow us, we'll get you to heaven. And nothing is going to make Jesus more upset than somebody who is like leading people down a path of destruction. So Jesus was nothing but assertive towards these people. I mean, he's saying, you're snakes, that all of you deserve to go to hell. And like just standing up, because you know what, the things that they're doing and how they're leading people down the wrong path was something that obviously Jesus was going to be passionate about, and getting people to turn and go down the right path and following him. But if Jesus can be assertive, certainly all of us, it's okay for us, as we want to model Jesus, to be assertive as well. All right, so being assertive is not being selfish, simply taking care of yourself. Right, so not being able to say no and letting people walk all over you is not a healthy situation. If you find yourself in that, you already know that. So being assertive is learning to say no, and the best thing you can do is like not make excuses and ramble on for 10 minutes about how you would love to do it, but you can't because you have all this other stuff going on and this and that. A lot of it, if somebody says, hey, Mike, can you come and speak at this event for us? It's on this day, this time, and I see my schedule. It may be I'm just coaching my son's baseball team that day or something. Like I don't make a whole lot of excuses. I would say I would love to. Please ask me again in the future. But for this one, I'm just not able to do it. And that's it. Most times, like, people respect that. I don't lose friendships. I don't lose professional relationships. It's just, I got something on my schedule already, ask me again in the future, and if I'm free. And if it's something I absolutely don't want to do, so people have asked me, they know I'm a magician. Hey, will you dress like a clown? Will you play Santa Claus? And that's just not me or my personality. I'm not afraid to say, like, man, that's just doesn't fit who I am, and I would not do a good job at that. Like, please ask somebody else. And people are okay with that. Like, I hear what you're saying, and so it's just not allowing people to make decisions for you and walk all over you. All right, so you can see in there, what is one thing in the past month you wish you could have said no to? So even create like a short 2-3 sentence. This is how I would have said no. This is what I would have said. And go ahead and write that in your notebook. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance. Again, you can go back and do that at the end if you haven't. But number 2, a lack of assertive behavior can play a part in depression. So some key points there. Leads to feeling misunderstood. If you allow people to walk all over you, you feel like people don't really understand you, makes you feel small, and it's tied closely to your self-talk and thinking. So again, Dr. Aaron Beck, who created the CBT, he says it's a predisposition to think poorly of yourself. It causes you to exaggerate problems, gives you an egocentric view of life, like everything revolves around me, total black and white thinking. Things either got to be good or bad. There's no gray areas. And a lot of times you can view yourself as helpless. So again, this is an area to work on. And one of the things I want to mention with a lot of these assessments and things, sometimes there's 30 different things that you need to change about yourself and want to change. And one of the things that I use all the time is a process called scaling. So it's kind of ranking. Here's the 6 things that I know I need to change about myself, and ranking them. Here's the most important, the second most important, the third most important. And then I even go as far as like, let's rank them according to how hard they would be to change. If you want to say, like, saying no to my boss is going to be super hard to say no to, because you don't want to lose your job and those sort of things, but it's the one you need to change the most. But then you say, hey, my neighbor want me to mow their lawn when I mow mine, like that wouldn't be that hard, and they wouldn't even be that upset if I did it, even though it's not that important. Sometimes it's good to go with the one that's not that hard to do, just to kind of get you moving in the right direction. And so you kind of rank, like, here's the things I need to change. Here's how hard it would be to change, kind of putting those together in a picture. And you can do this in your worry and time when you change it into action and planning, and say, it's a great exercise for you to do, and say, here is what I see clearly as a good starting point. And I'm going to work on exercising more. I'm going to work on weight loss. I'm going to work on saying no. I'm going to work on my anger. I'm going to work on whatever it is that you're dealing with, facing. And again, once you get one of them knocked out, or one of them moving in a really positive direction, then you go down to number 2 on your list, rather than looking at the whole list and saying, hey, I need to go out and change all these things, and being overwhelmed by it. Right. Now, another question I love to ask in this area, how are you at handling a compliment? And a lot of times that is a good gauge for assertiveness. So people with the lack of assertiveness tend to have a really hard time handling a compliment. And so might say, hey, I like your hair today. And somebody with an issue in this area will have like a reason why it's not as good as it could have been. Or they just won't buy it. They just won't believe it. So think about in your own life, how are you at handling compliments? And like I said, if you have a difficulty handling a compliment, it's another indicator that this is an area to work on. All right, so there's steps you can practice to learn assertive behavior. And one of the things I love to talk about in life is being proactive rather than reactive. So when I work with kids, I've had a lot of oppositional defiant kids, and a lot of times you find the parents are very reactive. So they just go like issue to issue to issue, and they're always reacting to a bad behavior. So proactive parenting, or proactive in living your life, is seeing like and planning for issues before they occur. So your child has a hard time at the grocery store, like coming up with a plan. And I've gone with kids to the grocery store where it's kind of like, all right, we got an hour, we got these 5 things to get. When we're done at the grocery store, whatever time we have left, we'll run over to the playground. But if we go in the grocery store and run away from the cart, or you start touching things on the shelves, we're just gonna have to leave the cart right where it's at, go out in the car till we calm down, and then go back in. And you always got to follow through. So kid wanders away. Hey, sorry, we got to go out to the car. We got to sit there for 5 minutes, and knowing that this is taking away from playground time. And so it's just planning for that behavior rather than going into the store and having it be a complete disaster. All right. So in your own life, when hey, this person is going to ask me this, I know I'm going to be asked to speak at this thing. I know I'm going to be asked to do somebody's work when they're on vacation, and just instead of reacting to it in the moment, the more that you can be proactive in life and kind of know, hey, these situations are going to come up, and not waiting for them to come up and being prepared for them is going to be a great thing. What one of the mentors I had, I remember that I really appreciated, when they had a difficult decision to make, that they would always go to the board members before a vote, and they would talk to each one, hey, we have to make a decision about this. This is where I feel like I'm going. What do you think? And, and he would explain it extremely well. And sometimes the board members wouldn't even agree and be on a different side, but he would be able to communicate it in a way like, are you okay if we at least try this direction, and would get it on board. So when a difficult decision would be made in a board meeting, everybody would be on at least on the same page. And so that was very proactive rather than reactive. Let's throw this up for a vote and it's split 50-50. Now people are fighting and getting angry. So I'm saying the more you can be proactive in life rather than reactive, the better you're going to be. But there's steps that you can practice to learn assertive behavior. So you can follow down through those steps. Be prepared. Again, that's being proactive. Pause. So somebody asks you, hey, can you watch my kids? Can you mow my lawn? Whatever it may be. You don't have to answer in that moment. Let me think about it. Let me talk to my family. Those sort of things. So positive inner dialogue, knowing, let's say, if I say no, they're not going to like me. I'm going to break this relationship. Do the better but believable thoughts. So put down protection when you make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Being willing to apologize. That no more worsticizing. Anxiety tends to start at the cemetery and work its way backwards. So a lot of times people come to you with something like you just tend to immediately get those negative thoughts. And hopefully now you're identifying those and starting to change them. And recognize your automatic thoughts. So the ones that when you see a person right away, it pops into your mind, like they're going to want something from me. This person is bad, or, this, just seeing a certain object like automatically kicks off a thought. That just work on those with the better but believable thoughts. Could even be the obsessive thoughts, and go through the steps for those as well. All right. And if at all possible, when you address a problem, have some kind of solution. Right. So your boss at work, your spouse, when you see an issue and you're going to go to them and say, hey, here's something that is going on and we really need to deal with this. Well, like, have at least some kind of solution in mind. And don't, and not always solutions are the greatest thing ever, but a lot of times you're in situations where there's just no great answer, but at least come up with some kind of solution that this will make the problem a little bit better. All right, so you got some samples in there. How would you change your thinking? So I'm not even going to work on these with you because I know you're getting to be an expert in these better but believable thoughts. And I love the statistics there. And say 20% of the people is going to like you no matter what. 20% is going to not like you no matter what. And 60% of the people can go either way. And our focus, I mean, not even that we have to have a focus, but should be more towards those 60%. And I think in the past, when I would do shows, I may be in front of 300 people, and 299 of them are having a great time, very engaged, and I'll see somebody in the front row that's kind of sitting there like this, and you can tell like they're not really having fun, they're not really being engaged, and my whole focus would go on them, and I would ignore the other 299 having a great time, and I'm just trying to win this person over. But in the meantime, who knows, that person may have just gotten bad news, they may be having a horrible day, and it has nothing to do with me, but my focus would always go on, and chances are they're probably just that 20% that's not going to like me no matter what I do. And so, again, there's not a whole lot you can do with 40% of the population. So, and doesn't matter who you are. Again, you can go Google, Mother Teresa, whoever you think is just an awesome, wonderful person. And there's going to be people that are putting them down and negative towards them. And there's just nothing you can do to make everybody like you. So you need to love yourself, focus on the positive people in your life, your family and your friends. And that goes to number 4, is to create a strong social network. So we were designed to be in relationship with others. And, even if you're introverted, you still need some type of relationship with people to stay healthy. Again, our social bond is part of our wellness chain with the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual as well. And to make friends, I love this phrase: practice being interested rather than interesting. So a lot of times in our conversations, we want to somehow make ourselves more interesting, and we think that's going to help us build friendships and make people like us. where the biggest thing that's going to make people like us and create friends is being interested in them rather than trying to be interesting. So tons of places. I mean, obviously church groups, find church programs, Bible studies, social groups within the church that you can join. One of my clients just told me about an app, I think it was called Meetup. So you can go in there and just put your hobbies. I like to fly kites. I like to read books. I like to go hiking. And it's not a dating app. It's just finding people in your area with similar interests. And so he goes out and does events with other guys and girls just for fun. Library has lots of different clubs and things, community events. And so there's lots of opportunities out there to get these social networks. And again, when you get there, just try and be interested in other people and their stories rather than worrying about being interesting. So for your homework, don't just do the sessions and use the skills you are learning. And I have no idea why I just caught my air. No idea why the word don't is in there. So it's just do the sessions and use the skills you're learning. So again, just following up everything that you've been doing, using all those skills. Again, a lot of the homework from here on out is really just focused on like using and putting all these pieces into the puzzle together. There is an opportunity there, say no or be assertive in 3 different situations this week. So being proactive, knowing I'm going to be asked to do this, and just being prepared to just say no and see how that turns out. And again, make it short, make it sweet. Now again, if this is something you're going to say no to your kids, you're going to say no to your spouse, and you haven't said that in 25 years, there could be a negative response to that just because it's not something that they're used to, and it may take them by surprise. And again, just like it's a habit you need to break, it's a habit that they need to break as well. So keep working at this, keep going through all this, and again, just love to hear your stories and journey. Join the Facebook page for that. Email me anytime, and can't wait to see you for session 12. See ya.